Hello, and welcome back to the Movie Clubhouse Podcast. Today, on Season 2, Episode 4, we have something very special outlined for you. It is nothing else than Scott Pilgrim Takes Off Season 1 review. But that's not all. We're also going to talk about Scott Pilgrim vs. the World, the original movie from 2010. Yes, we will make a comparison between the two, but we will especially, at the beginning of this episode, review Scott Pilgrim Takes Off Season 1. So we have a lot in store for you today. Without further ado, now, we have watched Scott Pilgrim Takes Off Season 1. All the 8 episodes in one go, almost one go. It took us 2 to 3 days to watch them, which was a bit long time, since the episodes is only 27 to 28 minutes long, approximately. But we can say that we really loved this show. All the 8 episodes were phenomenal. We really want to praise the animation in this series. It's wow, it's so great. It really makes you drawn to the screen and it really sticks with you. It makes the characters pop and the colors pop and everything just pops, if you would say it like that. It's a wow animation. This anime style that the show is brought up on is really great. It's a little bit different. I wouldn't call it raw anime style or raw anime as you may see in some other projects. It's definitely anime influenced and it has an anime core to it. But I would say it's a little bit different and that is what makes it so great and so outstanding. We really love the animation of this show. When it comes to the characters and the dialogue, we all think it was great. Nothing felt like filler and nothing felt cheesy. It was some great, concise dialogue. The writing that goes hand in hand with the dialogue was also great. The character and the story felt fleshed out, nothing felt like filler, and everything was just spot on. It was great. All the characters felt like they were getting enough development, and the interaction that all the characters had with each other felt concise and well done. The characters in this show is really some of the best parts of it. We of course have Scott Pilgrim, Ramona Flowers, and a lot of her evil excess, as you may know about. But some of the other characters like Knife Chow, Envy Adams, Lucas Lee, Stacy Pilgrim, Julia Powers, Kim Pine, all of them were great. Each character is different and each character makes you interested in the character more because you want to see how their story unfolds and you always want to see more of them. Many of them are extremely funny, which is great. Each character has their own personality and that really gets time to shine. The personality really comes through, which is also a great aspect of the show. The voice cast in this show is almost the exact same as from the original movie from 2010. And that's great. It's a star-studded cast featuring people as Michael Cera, Mary Elizabeth Winstead, Ellen Wong, Brie Larson, Chris Evans, Anna Kendrick, Aubrey Plaza, Alison Fill, Kieran Culkin, Johnny Simons, and going on. It's a star-studded cast, which is great to see. I think each of the real characters or real people that do the voices for each character does a phenomenal job. They really get the characters to feel alive and they really have great chemistry on screen. I don't know if they recorded some of the lines together in a recording booth or if there was separate, but they really feel like they have great chemistry with each other. Otherwise, the editing is really well done. Another aspect of this show that was extremely great was the music. We really loved the music, especially the intro credits were great. They're really beautiful visually and had some great bangers of a song. This anime style song or Japanese song was really great and the rock theme that fits this show or leans over it is very fitting for this kind of story. And when it comes to the story, I think the story was great. The story diverted a lot from the original movie from 2010. It was not the same, which was great to see. We were really happily surprised when we, after watching the series, watched the original movie. We should not call it original. We just call it the 2010 movie. Because the comics are the original source. And we have not read the comics, we need to say that. But that is something that we maybe will do later because this series and movie was such a great time. The story. The story was great. I really think that each character that existed in this universe gave something important to the story No character really felt like fillers. And we of course have these 7 evil exes that Ramona Flowers have. Each of them having to fight them, of course Scott Pilgrim having to do that, felt interesting. All these exes gave something exciting to the story. And it didn't feel repetitive to see one ex after the other. Each of them were different, and all the other side characters or semi-characters that came beside Ramona Flowers and Scott Pilgrim were also interesting. All of them gave something to the story, and it was interesting to go a little bit deeper to each of their own stories, go into each separate character story and see a little bit more about their background. It was really fun to see. Otherwise, we think the story was great. I would say that I don't know if I have any favorite episode or least favorite episode, because all of them were especially great. I think the ending towards the first season were also, not to spoil that much, was also a pretty fitting ending. It wasn't the best ending I've seen, but it was a great one still. When it comes to the terms of episode length, I think this was also a perfect thing they did. 27 to 28 minutes is a perfect length. Not too short at around 20-21 minutes, and not too long at 1 hour, for example. I would say that half an hour to 40 minutes is the perfect episode length for most series. And I really want to see more of them. For example, The Mandalorian is also 30 to 40 minutes long. And that feels like the perfect sweet spot for most series. To stay in that interval is probably the best thing to do. And I encourage filmmakers to do more series in that length. Because when going over 1 hour, I feel like there is a little bit too much content. It would probably be better to splice the episode up then, to have like more episodes, but shorter ones. Another thing that we want to praise about Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is the Mortal Kombat style fighting that we get to see in the show, when there is one character versus another character. For example, it would be Scott Pilgrim versus one of the evil exes. And then they have afterwards this really cool fighting montage that is really anime influenced and is so cool and so dopamine filled. It really it's really food for your eyes. It looks really good on screen. And nothing in this show or this fighting felt repetitive. Everything was great. You think that maybe this fighting these 7 exes should feel repetitive, but it didn't do it in any way in the series or movie. There was no obvious filler in the whole series. What I could notice made me feel like I'm just seeing filler. Everything felt like it gave me something towards the story. In the movie, perhaps, the 7 exes felt a little bit less vibrant, but that's because when comparing the movie from 13 years ago to this new series that's anime influenced, or is an anime series, it is, of course, more colorful, and it's also 3 times as long if you compare all the episodes, or you take all the episodes and compare it to the one film. So it's a lot longer and it gets a lot more backstory into it, which is always great. This is a really good product that fits really well as a series. But I can also say that the series is weird, a little bit weird at times, but that's in a good way. And it's also a bit unclear at times for what they mean. But it's not that you won't get the story. It's just that there is elements, for example, this space traveling thing, and that there is things mentioned in the story that you would think, what is that? What do they mean? And how can they not care more about that? It's like there is some inside joke that you don't really understand, but that the characters know about and that they just accept as a normal thing. It's really interesting to see. It really makes the show even more interesting. It's not in any way bad. It's just like an inside joke that you don't really get, but that you need to think about. It's really interesting. They have this, like, as I said, space traveling thing. They can go through like doors. That is really unrealistic, but for them seems like really normal. It can, of course, be another thing is that it can, of course, be another thing really, but that's covered by this more unrealistic stuff. But that's hard to know if they are doing this space traveling for real or if it's just a fantasy thing for them. But it still gives the show a lot of depth. As we said, we watched the not OG film, but the original. I keep saying original. The film from 2010 that was directed by Edgar Wright. That's a big name, big director name nowadays, or has always been almost. And that film was very interesting to first see the series and then go see the film. I really like the movie. I probably prefer the series because of the anime style. But the movie was really cool, having a lot of these cartoony special effects and also a little bit of this unrealistic stuff that you don't really get. It was really interesting to see. The story is also, of course, a little bit not cheesy, but a little bit unrealistic. But it's really fun to see. It's just a good time watching this film and series. I don't know if I have any of the favorite characters, really. I can't pick. They are all so great. Scott Pilgrim is, of course, fantastic. Ramona Flower is really interesting. Knives Chow is in both the series and the movie really, how would you describe it? She has a lot of energy. And sometimes it is really just adorable. She has so much energy and gives the show and the movie some really moments where you really go, oh, that's so cute. Envy Adams is a really interesting character. She's played by Brie Larson that I almost didn't recognize in the 2010 movie. She was really different, and she's of course a lot younger than it was 13 years ago. But she does a really interesting job with Envy Adams. Envy Adams is probably my least favorite character from both the series and the show. Not that Brie Larson did anything bad, but she doesn't really get that much screen time, really. When it comes to the 7Xs, I have a hard time really picking one that's my favorite. I will probably say that Gideon Graves is one of the more interesting ones. And what is other name? The other guy, James Patel, or something Patel is his after name, at least. He is also a really funny character that gives a lot of funny dialogue and is displaying a lot of different angles of himself. But one thing I would notice about the series is that in the middle of the series, or the early start to the middle, there isn't that much Scott Pilgrim in the Scott Pilgrim Takes Off series. He is pretty absent for most of the middle of the series, which gives Ramona Flowers a lot of the spotlight, and her character gets to have more exploration, which is always fun to see. But that is one thing I thought a little bit weird. In the movie, there isn't really the same storyline. They divert a lot towards the middle. But I would say that Scott Pilgrim being absent in a big part of the series is a little bit weird. But it still works very well when it in some way comes back towards the later part of it. But as I said, all the characters are extremely fun. This is a fun time movie and a fun time series. And except for the fun, we also have a lot of love going around in both the series and the movie. There is a really big love connection between Ramona Flowers and Scott Pilgrim, which really makes you cheer for them. You really feel something. It touches your heart in some kind of way. And when it does that, you know it's a great movie or TV series. It makes you feel for the characters. And that is something that's really important. I think the love aspect of both the series and the movie is some of the strongest parts of these projects. For example, Scott and Ramona, their relationship is really interesting. And to see that change and evolve, it touches your heart in some kind of way. It's really interesting. And there is also this other relationship in these other characters. For example, with Knives Chow and Scott Pilgrim, it's really interesting to see the relationship evolve and turn into something different. That's a really interesting part of the project or the series. But when things go bad for your characters, you also feel that it hurts a little bit in your heart. And when it really does that, it's such a great written project. Another thing I want to touch upon before we end this is a space-way travel that they talked about in both the series and the movie. And this is the key of the little bit of inside joke that you really don't get. It's a lot weirder when you watch it than when I have to explain it. It's really interesting because you don't know if it's real life in the series or if it's just their imagination. It seems to be real life, but why doesn't they care more about it? It's really weird. Like, it's not a big deal in some kind of way. That was one of the more interesting parts of the shows, or what I thought about a lot after watching it. It was really interesting. But I need to say that the series is absolutely not the exact same as the movie. You should definitely watch both. Maybe watch the movie first and then go watch the series, or watch the series and then go watch the movie. Both ways work because the story is not exactly the same. And of course, if you can, you should always watch or always read the comics if you haven't or if you want to do it. I will maybe do it later if I get some time over. We also say that the series really had this great attention to small details, which was really great to see. There were some small details sprinkled in there that really made it seem like the filmmakers really cared about this project and wanted it to be the best as it could be, because it was done with so much care, if I would say it like that. When it comes to the final episode of the series, comparing the movie ending to the series ending, I think I would probably pick, it's a hard one, I think I would probably pick the series ending still. It was a little bit more fun compared to the movie ending, but it was also a little bit more unrealistic. So depending on what you want, you may prefer one over the other. There is also this kind of mystery feeling or thing going on throughout the show, and that you really have to scratch your head on at the beginning to figure it out. I didn't figure it out before they really started to get towards the later part of the season what it was all about. But there is this mystery going on throughout the series, which is a really great mystery because I didn't really understand before they almost told me what it was or who it was that did all those things. Not to spoil anything, but who was the big person in this drama. And it also turned a lot when it comes to story-wise. The story turned in a different direction when I expected it to do. So it was really great to see that. It really was not what you expected it to be. And if I would have watched the movie before watching the series, I would still not have known what was to come. And that is just great. It's a great writing. When it comes to another aspect of the show, which is the intro credits and the outro credits. When it comes to both the film from 2010 and the series, I think that the outro credits or end credits could have gotten some more love. They were just white text on black screen. If they got some more colors popping, like they do in many Marvel projects, for example, they have very interesting end credits. That would have been great to see. But for a film that is 13 years old, I can, of course, see why it may just have been white on black. But for the series, comparing it to the intro, the outro, I would have seen the outro get some more love. It has some great music, some great bangers of songs, but to see it get some more visual love would have been great. The intro for Scott Pilgrim Takes Off is also, as I said, really great. It has some really great songs, and it's really colorful and has this anime feeling to it. Because it's in the core, it's an anime adaptation, I would say. And it's really great. The intro gets you really up-hyped for the coming episode, and it's a fun time. Really gets you hyped for what you will get to experience. Otherwise, when it comes to all the characters in the show, one we haven't mentioned is, for example, Wallace Wells and Young Neil. They are two very interesting characters, and seeing their story unfold is a lot of fun. They are really some extraordinary characters. All characters really are that. For example, Kim Pine, Julia Powers, they have unique abilities to each of them. And seeing their story unfold is really great. And each of the individual evil exes also has this unique aspect to them. And this unique way of talking, of moving, and of fighting. It's really interesting to see. And season 1 is setting up a sequel season in a kind of way, which is great to see. But I don't know if this series or this movie would have needed a sequel. I feel, how would I say it? I feel full after dinner, as if I have eaten a lot of food that's tasting really great. And I feel full. I don't need any more. Maybe some dessert could have gotten sprinkled in, some behind the scenes or some... There is, of course, behind the scenes from the movie, probably. I haven't seen that, or they've seen the behind the scenes. Or some extra special episode later on for the series. But I don't feel like I need a whole new season or a second sequel to the film or a sequel to the movie. Because it feels like the story is complete towards the end. It feels great. Like there is nothing more that needs to be told. If there were something more that would have needed to be told when it comes to the story, of course there should be a sequel or a sequel season. But now I feel like the show was completed and the movie was also complete. So I feel satisfied with the ending when it comes to that. When it comes to especially Scott Pilgrim versus the World, I think the art direction in that movie is also great, as we said. The visual elements really pop on screen. The characters and their chemistry and the performances the live action characters give, it feels authentic, even though it's a little bit unrealistic. But their chemistry on screen is one of the big, great aspects of this show. Same goes for the villains. They are really unique and interesting. And as we said, the story really changes a lot from the film to the series, which makes it really, it makes you able to watch both of them, really. It doesn't feel repetitive. That's a big, important thing to say. And it's a lot of funny scenes and a lot of funny moments that really gets you, it really puts a smile on your face. And when it comes to this fighting, I would say the fighting is more interesting in the series compared to the movie, but that's because the series can do a lot more with the animation than you can do in real life or live action. So I would say the fighting is great in both, but I prefer the series. One character that I haven't mentioned, however, or two characters, I have mentioned one of them a little bit, is Scott's sister, played by Anna Kendrick, as well as Julia Powers, played by Aubrey Plaza. They are two characters that I feel got more development in the movie compared to the series. And I felt they were greater characters in the movie compared to the series. Why, I don't really know. They felt like Anna Kendrick gave a lot more to the character of Scott's sister in the movie. A lot more screen time, for first to mention that, but a lot more authenticity. And Julia Powers also got a little more development. It was a little bit more dynamic in the movie. Another thing that's interesting about the film and the series is the different characters' powers, which is also one of these really weird inside jokes that should feel like a bigger deal for the characters, but aren't. Like, does everyone have special powers in this universe? It seems like it. Each of the individual X's has some type of special powers, and they feel refreshing and they are interesting to see. Some of my favorite powers are probably the vegan powers that one of the characters have. Is it Todd Phillips, maybe? I don't remember really if that's that X that has that vegan powers. And every character, when killed, also drops coins like it was a video game. I would say this is a mix of anime, video game, and cartoon. Also, for example, the series. And the movie is live action and cartoon combined and get some game aspects combined together. And it's really interesting to see. There are some jokes and scenes that carry over from the movie to the series. And you really, when you watch, for example, the series first and then the movie, or vice versa, you really sit there and can notice when, I remember seeing that. Or, I remember seeing that. That was so funny. It's so cool to carry that over. Or made a new version of it, if you would say it like that. But I would also say that this series or movie is not for the youngest people. It may seem like a friendly cartoon or anime series, but I think it's for a little bit of the older audience, maybe teens to adults, maybe. Not for the youngest audience. It has some graphic scene, not graphic scenes, but some more graphic scenes and some jokes that the youngest audience maybe won't get. That's at least what I feel like. Either way, I had a incredibly fun time watching both the series as well as the movie. There is this expressiveness that each character have and the story as a whole, which makes the project great. And watching the movie, you really get remembered about the good old days, not good, the film isn't that old, it's only 13 years, it came out in 2010, but the good old days for films that are maybe 10 to 20 years old, when it wasn't all about this multiverse thing and connection to every film had to connect. It was just a fun time creating a movie and experiencing it on the big screen. That is a big thing I will take away from the movie. And as I said, it was directed by Edgar Wright, the film also. Or the film was directed by Edgar Wright. I don't know about the series who directed that. I think it was some different versions. I don't have the names on them. But for example, Edgar Wright is a big name in the movie industry. I think he did a great job with the film. And as we said, I haven't read the Scott Pilgrim comics yet. But that is something I may get into at a later date because this show and movie was such a great time. And it was some of these individual character changes that was comparing the movie to the series, that there was some individual character changes that were really also interesting to see. The Scott Pilgrim was, of course, the same in both, but he had some changes to him that really made this thing rewatchable. like watching the story in a movie and then watching the story in a series. It was small things that was really valuable, I would say. And finally, I also want to talk about the set design or the environment design for the series. I think the environments that was the same, for example, they were in a playground during a snowstorm in both the series and the movie. And I think these environments was really well thought out. And it was really fitting for the character story or the conversation they were having. And some of the fight scenes really took place in interesting locations. For example, this film studio, and in the movie, one of the fights took place at, for example, a cafe or more of a club. There were some really interesting locations involved in this, both the show and the film. And comparing the villains, as I said, I don't know what my best villain was or my preferred villain was, but all 7 of them were interesting enough to experience a fight with them each on the big screen. Or I didn't experience the fight, but to get to see a fight with them each on the screen. And each villain felt refreshing, unique, and different abilities. And they also played a different integral part to Ramona Flower's story. All of that was interesting to see. It really made this whole series feel compact, but conclusive, as well as filled to the brim with just fun stuff. Same goes for a movie. It felt compact and it included all the aspects that I would have wanted from a film. It's not my favorite film of all time, but I don't have any really negatives to say about it. It's just because some films may be even better on some of the aspects that this movie from 2010 was. But I would probably say that this is one of the better films and series I have watched in 2023 alone. I would probably end it on that. One of the best series and films that I watched this year. It's that great. So I definitely recommend that you watch maybe Scott Pilgrim Takes Off, the series, season 1, first. It's only 8 episodes and they are 27 minutes long, approximately. And then you can go watch the movie because you will really love the movie if you love the series and vice versa. At least I think so. I think that would be the case. So I recommend you go watch it. The series is on Netflix. The movie you can probably rent somewhere. I don't know if in the Netflix in the US. It was not here in Sweden at least. But I recommend you watch both. They were really, really great. It made my week feel really, really colorful. So there you have it. That was our review for Scott Pilgrim Takes Off and our comparison Scott Pilgrim Takes Off and Scott Pilgrim vs. the World from 2010. 2 great projects, yet again. It was always fun time to see some great projects coming through, even if they are 10 years old or if they are brand new. This has been the Movie Clubhouse. I'm your host, Eddie. Remember to subscribe to this podcast so you don't miss any of our newer episodes. For example, we're dropping new episodes every week, often multiple times, so you won't want to miss any of that. And if you feel like it, of course, you can always leave a review. It helps us tremendously. But that's all for this time. Until we see you guys next time, have a great time watching.